Have you ever felt yourself chased by a mistake you made, hunted and haunted by it? Like Jean Valjean in Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, who's relentlessly pursued because of a past choice. He spends decades turning his life around, doing good, and completely reinventing himself. Yet no matter how far he travels, he's hunted by Inspector Javert. The inspector isn't a villain. He pursues Valjean because the law demands justice, not forgiveness. For Valjean, then, the whole world becomes a trap. The chase never ends. Welcome back to Torah in 7. I'm Bela Olidort, and this week we conclude the book of Bamidbar with a double portion of Matot-Masei. So I want to look at its entire arc and see where we were at the beginning of the book and where we are now at its end. As you probably remember, the book of Bamidbar began in the wilderness, a vast, undefined space where the desert feels like absolute freedom, where there are no confining spaces or defining borders. And for 40 years, the Israelites wandered through it. But the wilderness has no lasting structure. You can't build a society where there are no boundaries. So the Torah begins preparing the people for that transition, organizing the camp into precise coordinates around the Mishkan. And every one of the 42 journeys listed in this week's Parsha moves them one step farther from the lawless openness of the desert and one step closer to an ordered civilization. And now we reach the end of Bamidbar, the end of their travels, where the people prepare to enter a world of order and definition. And the Torah says, "This is the land that shall fall to you as your portion, the land of Canaan with its various boundaries." And the verses that follow describe the borders of the whole of the promised land, north, south, east, and west. Then the Torah maps out the borders within the land for each tribe. And then it zooms in still further, identifying 42 cities for the Levites. Finally, the Torah carves out one more boundary, the Ir Miklat, the city of refuge. There were 6 of them, and each was a designated space where a person who's being relentlessly pursued for a mistake they made can cross into it and find protection from their avenger. And this was necessary because under biblical law, if a person took a life by accident, the closest relative of the victim, the Goel Hadam, or the blood avenger, had the legal right to retaliate. So think of the Ir Miklat as a firewall. The moment the killer stepped inside its boundary, the avenger's right to retaliate was suspended. And as long as the killer remained inside the Ir Miklat, they were protected. They were required to live there until they stood trial to prove the death was accidental, and they had to remain within the city borders until the death of the high priest, which is another strange and fascinating condition for another time. So the Ir Miklat is how the earthly courtroom handles the crisis of an accidental killing. But there's a beautiful midrash in the Psikta de Rav Kahana that takes us into the heavenly courtroom, where an even deeper question is being asked. What should happen to the sinner? And in this cosmic trial, there are 4 distinct voices that respond. We have wisdom, prophecy, Torah, and God himself. First, wisdom offers a response of pure consequence. Let evil pursue sinners, says wisdom. In other words, your actions must eventually catch up to you. Then prophecy answers from a perspective of absolute justice. Prophecy says, the soul that sins shall die. It leaves no room for error. The penalty must be paid. Then Torah offers a legal compromise. Let him bring a guilt offering, and the sacrifice will wipe the slate clean. And finally, the Holy One, blessed be He, gives a different answer. Let the sinner do tshuva. Let him change course, and he will find atonement. And notice that God's response is the only one that doesn't demand punishment. What it demands is a change of direction. But God also knows how the real world works. He knows that the rigid judgment of the law, the javets of reality, will still hunt a person down before they ever have the chance to change course. So God steps into the map and carves out a bordered space, the Ir Miklat, the city of refuge, to which the killer could run for safety. And that's not all. The Ir Miklat was required to have clearly marked signs with the word Miklat Miklat pointing the direction. And the sages also required that the path be wide and uncluttered to make it easy for the person seeking refuge in the very worst moment of their life to navigate their way to safety. The Lubavitcher Rebbe sees the city of refuge as a physical model of Torah itself, an ordered world one can inhabit where boundaries don't diminish life, but rather anchor it and safeguard its very vitality. And the psychoanalyst David Winnicott arrived at the same paradox from a different direction. He observed that a person doesn't recover inside total unstructured freedom. They recover inside what he called a holding environment, reliable, contained, sturdy enough to protect one from the open world that leaves us exposed to danger. In our own lives, the avenger chasing us may not be external at all. Often it's our own regrets, our mistakes, and the inner critic insisting that we're permanently defined by our worst moments. What stops that pursuit isn't more open space, but a firm boundary that prevents the past from overtaking us. It's true that the total absence of limits, the chaotic openness of the wilderness, has the appeal of breathtaking freedom. But it's also where we are most vulnerable, hunted and exposed to the chase. The avengers in our own lives, the whisper of an old shame, the weight of a past choice that follows us into the dark, or the drift of a life without meaning or spiritual depth, show us that the boundaries of Torah do not diminish life. They anchor and shape it, acting not as its enemy, but as its cradle. And this is where the book of Bamidbar ends. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. That's Torah in 7 from Matot-Masei. If you'd like to go deeper, there's a companion study guide with Hebrew terms, sources, and additional readings for further learning at torahin7.substack.com. If you'd like to dedicate an episode in honor or memory of someone, you can email me at torahin7@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Shabbat Shalom.